I think it's Gallup that report that 90% of the UK workforce are quietly quitting, i.e. they're not engaged. That's the stat. That's ridiculous. We can make as much money as we want here, but if culture sucks and this workplace is dull and draining and boring, we may as well go home and call it a day. It's not worth it. Perhaps the best way to measure culture is how people behave when you're not there. That's really the only real way to gauge culture. It's not what you write on a wall or in a PDF. My belief is that most companies now write something generic like, our staff are our most important asset to us. And I always want to ask, could you just give me one way in which you could prove that to me, please? Just one way. When you get culture right, first and foremost, everything else flows, everything else follows. And that's actually what happened.
Hey, just before we jump into the show, got a little favour to ask you. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, please make sure you are subscribed on the platform of your choice. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever platform that might be. The more people who subscribe and the more people who like and rate the show, the more we give you an opportunity to have some great takeaways. Doesn't take you too long, and it would be a great help to us to help us grow the show. For now, that's it. Enjoy today's recording. Good afternoon, Matt. Thank you very much for joining the Business Takeaway podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board today, and lots, I think, to be discussed. But do you want to give a bit of background to the listeners of who you are, how you come to where you are today, and a bit about your journey?
Yes, of course. Hello, Ben. Lovely to meet you. Yes, my name is Matt. I could give a very long answer here, but I'll try and do a succinct one. When I left school, I was 18, and I was a classic kind of techie, nerdy, DJ-esque kind of kid. I guess in hindsight, with a bit of entrepreneurial spirit, because I left school and set up a business. That business was called Clownfish Events. And I stayed running that business all the way through until I was 35. So if you can do the maths, that's 16 and a half years. And the business, whilst it was nothing really on day one or even day 500 really, it was just me and a best mate called Alistair, it really grew. We won lots of awards. And when I left, there was about 27 or 28 full-time people. We owned a few buildings. We had some of the biggest clients in the world doing corporate events. And most importantly, we'd won things like Best Place to Work for the Sunday Times. And actually, just recently won Technical Production Team of the Year from the CN Agency Awards. So it became a much bigger thing when I left. And by the time I'd left, it had really grown and matured. But for lots of reasons, I decided to leave at the end of August 2025. And it's now been about 9 or 10 months of not having a job. So right now, if you ask me honestly what I'm doing in my life, I'm not really sure. I am doing things like this, podcasts. And yesterday I facilitated a debate in London. I was on stage earlier this year a couple of times. I've done a panel show or two. Speaking about culture and speaking about leadership, they're probably the things I was known for much more than events in the end. So I'm very privileged that I'm not forced to have to work anytime soon, but also I have realized that not working is pretty awfully boring, especially at 30, or now 36. And I'm not a golfer, so what else do you do? And so, I'm still working out the next bit, but helping leaders grow and employees flourish at work has always been a gigantic passion of mine. So I kind of know that whatever happens, I'll end up doing something in that space. And I already am to an extent.
Let's get the first one out of the way. Why did you leave Clownfish? A successful business, growing business, doing some really cool stuff.
It's so funny. Like lots of my friends in the industry were almost annoyed at me for leaving. The reaction was, Matt, what? Why are you doing that? Like, well, that's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Like almost slightly pissed off. And my answer became to them, well, look, if not now, when? I.e., when do you want me to leave? What is your plan for your business? And I think probably if people were more honest, the kind of slight aggression, I'm being a bit dramatic there, but almost the frustration with me for leaving was more about them because I think a lot of people get into this industry and just stay kind of forever, not necessarily because they choose to, but more because they don't really know anything else. And actually, the alternative, it's a bit like Stockholm syndrome. The alternative of change is actually more scary than where they are today. And so for me, it kind of, if not now, when? I was 35 when I left. Do you want me to stay till I'm 50? Actually, I've had a fair innings, having not done university and not having had another job. This is all I have ever done since I left school. It's also true to say that the last time that I didn't run a business was when I was sitting my kind of A-levels at 17. So this is all I've ever done. It's all I've ever known. I got it, I believe, into the best possible shape I could. And I have to say, with a bit of therapy and a bit of help, I'm incredibly proud. It's been a very, very complicated journey, and anyone that runs a business or an organization will adhere to that. It's a complex thing to do. It breaks the odds to succeed and to be profitable and to stay open for more than 3, 5, 10, 15 years. Like it is almost abnormal to do that these days, sadly, in the current economic climate, but also in the reality of small business. So I'm pleased with what I did. It was an amazing company. I believe we were fair to win the Sunday Times Best Place to Work. I believe culture here was by and large pretty amazing. I definitely thought different to most of my acquaintances in the industry. So part of me thinks I got it to as far as it could be taken to with my skill set. Part of me thinks that I've done it for a long time. It's all I've ever known, time for change. But also it's true to say that to get the business to the next place, I wasn't the best person to general manage or to lead it. I got it to a few million. The new managing director called Johnny wants to get us to 12 million, $1 million a month, which I think is actually quite soon, and I think I'll do pretty quickly. But to do that, it takes a different kind of thinking to the original founder entrepreneurial spark that started the thing. To get to that kind of level with, let's say, 50 to 60 team members, the truth is you're going to have to be much more over the kind of systems and processes. You're going to have to be all over the numbers and the tracking and the data. You're going to have to be meticulous and detail orientated. And that's not really me. And I remember vividly, it was actually about this time last year, post-Easter, sitting with our board and our kind of, we call it CLT, Clownfish Leadership Team. And I said a sentence like, guys, I'm not sure I would hire me to general manage this business to 12 million. And just to be clear, I would absolutely 100% hire me, but not for that role. And if that was true, which I believe that it was true, then why on earth would I put myself in this role? That's not fair on my colleagues. That's not even fair to the business. And it probably isn't the best place for me. So it was a sad thing because I don't think people here wanted me to go. I think I had great relationships with the team, but I believed it was the right thing for me, and I believed it was the right thing for the business, and therefore, time to move on. And so, yeah, I have not run this business or really been in the business since August 2025.
But that's a huge amount of self-awareness on yourself, right? Because you could turn around and go, I could stay here, as you said, you could stay till 50, 60, whenever you want to retire and do that. But was there a moment you just went, it needs to grow without me, and letting go of a baby sort of type thing? Or was it just a, hey, I'm not feeling it? What drove that? Was there one specific thing that drove it?
I told the story in an interview with Sarah, actually, my former colleague. I started journaling, which was a new thing. And by the way, thank you for saying the thing about self-awareness. I think that is a extraordinary skill that is perhaps overlooked. I don't think we talk about that enough. Being self-aware, especially as leader, is arguably the most significant thing that will impact you and therefore everyone around you. And so I work really hard on that. I am a classic overthinker, probably quite an anxious person a lot of the time. And I used to not like myself for that, until I realized that actually it is those things, being an overthinker and an anxious person, that has made me become hyper self-aware. And actually it's the hyper awareness of self that has allowed me to have amazing relationships, and I think generally make pretty good decisions. That was a bit of a side note there. I started journaling, and that's all part of self-awareness, I suppose. And I used to live in Wimbledon, and I walked up the hill at Joe and the Juice, my favorite coffee shop, where it was then, it's now Gale's. And I journaled kind of privately with headphones in, just like thinking about why I was finding this particular phase of life a year ago complex and difficult. And I think I wrote something like, I built a business that has almost outgrown my skill set. Or I built a business that I wanted to feel safe inside of and I wanted my skills to be utilized for, but I just don't think I am actually the best person for this. The business has almost outgrown me and what I can give. And it was a really sad thing. I actually remember being quite emotional the whole walk home, thinking, gosh, like I don't think I fit here anymore. And so look, that was possibly the start of it. Lots of conversations and more journaling and more self-awareness kind of led me to this idea that I feel it's time to move on. I feel it's I feel it's time for change. Like the new guard can come in now. The world is changing so quickly and so fast. I also feel so exhausted. It's a long time to be doing one thing. And I appreciate a lot of people do it for even longer than that. But I hadn't had much break. I hadn't had kids. I have only ever had one relationship. I had barely traveled. I traveled to New York a lot, but I had barely traveled outside of that. I've not seen the world. I didn't do university. I haven't really done nights out. I haven't really done a lot of I haven't even done drugs. I haven't done a lot of the things that people might ordinarily do from between 18 and, I don't know, 30. I just kind of doggedly had my head down and ran a business. And I realized, gosh, I could do with, for all those reasons that I've given, now is time for change. And I actually ended up feeling really good about it. And the real truth is I have not missed running a business for a split second, not even for a split second. It's now been 9 months. I absolutely miss the people. I miss the structure, and I miss the incredible sense of purpose that I had here. But no part of me actually misses running a business and what it does to you. And just before I finish the answer, there's I said this recently, but my favorite clip or my favorite film of all time is the Robbie Williams biopic, which is called Better Man. And right at the end, he's sitting in what effectively is like an Alcohol Anonymous sort of round table chat. And Robbie Williams says, they say that life freezes the moment you become famous. So technically, I'm still 15. And I think that for a lot of people that have high pressure jobs, or start things maybe a little bit too early, ahead of the time that perhaps they were ready, and I would absolutely put myself as that. Part of me thinks that there are parts of me that froze at 18, because as soon as I left school, bang, I had pressure, I had status, I had responsibility. Quite quickly, I started hiring people. I started paying proper commercial rents. We put ourselves out there. One of our first taglines was London's leading event company, which is ridiculous. I was living at home at the time, but I was kind of full of this confidence and push and drive to achieve. And so much of my growth and personal development, I think, got stuck at 18 years old. And I just distracted myself with this enormous kind of snowball of a business that became Clownfish. And so actually, through my therapist's advice a year ago, she said, Matt, the only way you could ever heal, and I hope you don't mind me sounding deep, but maybe this is helpful to someone, the only way you can really heal is if you retract from this business and take the pressure off yourself and bring your metaphorical and literal shoulders down a notch. And I have to say, she was right. I feel quite different in the last 9 months. I'm so calm. I have so little in my diary. I have much more time to be present with friends. I'm a much better friend. I'm a much better partner. I am much fitter and much more healthy than I used to be. And that's a huge change for me. And so, yeah, I have space, time in a way that I actually really didn't learn how to do properly when I ran a business.
And you said this is the only thing you had in your diary today was to do this recording, which is probably, as we said, talked off air, is a huge thing.
Well, my day to day is I go to David Lloyd to the gym at 7 this morning. Then between 8 and 9:30, I'm in their spa. It's absolutely incredible. I then come back. I had breakfast with 2 of my Polish builders who've been there for 6 months. I've got to know them very well, outside in the sun. I then walked a dog for our dog for about 45 minutes. I then walked to Joe and the Juice in my local high street, which is no longer Wimbledon, had lunch, made a few calls, and came here to do this podcast. And actually, as a result, that might sound lazy, and people might, be envious. But as a result, I am much more present. I'm much more here. I'm much more available, and so I think I'll give a better interview for it. And I'm stiller, which is nice.
The two things you sort of talked on in that, you talked about the Sunday Times thing, being best business, and the culture. Before we because there'll be topics we'll talk about culture. What is Matt's culture?
Great question. It's often said that in a smaller organization, culture ends up being an extension of the leader, or the boss, the owner. Whether that's intentional or not, that is so often the way. I often say on stage, every company has a culture. It just might not be the one that you want. And perhaps the best way to measure culture is how people behave when you're not there, as in you as in the owner or the leader. How do people behave when you're not there? That's really the only real way to gauge culture. It's not what you write on a wall or in a PDF. It's how people actually communicate and behave. I think, therefore, on the basis that the culture was the people I hired and the way in which we did things was just an extension of my thinking and who I was or am, I think I'd like to say it became probably joyous first. I often used to say, there's no amount of money that this company could make that would make it worthwhile if it resulted in a culture that sucked. i.e., we've all lost. We can make as much money as we want here, but if culture sucks and this workplace is dull and draining and boring, we may as well go home and call it a day. It's not worth it. And I was really clear on that. And everyone that has ever worked with me, past and present, I think would testify to that or agree with that. I was never that interested in the commercial aspect of things. That was, of course, an important reality. You'd have no business without having an understanding of that. Yeah. But primarily, the thing I say all the time is we spend so much time at work. What an extraordinary thing to get wrong if your workplace is draining and boring and soulless and purposeless, and if colleagues are nasty and bitchy and unkind to each other, and you're scared of who you work with. You can't even have a conversation about a complex issue like a pay slip being wrong or an annual leave day being overdue or whatever. What a horrible way to spend so much of your time if that's the workplace that you have. So I think first and foremost, it would be have fun. Like, life is short. Work is hard. Yes, we both work, or I worked and you do work in the events industry. The reality is that can be 3 a.m. It can be Saturday night. It can be a short amount of sleep. It can be alarmed at 3 a.m. It can be intense, long days. It can be incredibly high pressure. This industry has all the makeup of what could be a nervous breakdown for you, because it is all complicated. I think it's very similar to working in hospitality in restaurants or in catering or in hotels or so on. It's a complex industry, but there are so many things we can do to make it fun, joyous. And I think we've really lost that. There was a Tesco Christmas advert 3 years ago. I think it led with, there's a joy shortage. And I have to say, I couldn't agree more. If there's one thing we could all agree on in society right now, it's there's a real lack of happiness, lack of joy. And I don't think happiness and joy should just be reserved for evenings and weekends with your family, if you have one. Whilst that hopefully is true for you, that home life is joyous, we should probably spend more energy and time making our workplace happy and joyous. So that was a massive one to me. I also probably want to add that what we do for a living ultimately is create happy, fun, memorable experiences for our clients. We started doing weddings or 18th birthday parties or 50th birthday parties or bar mitzvahs. They are happy, wonderful, momentous occasions. They're milestones of people's lives. We ended up doing corporate events, whether that's team building, whether that's conferences, bringing teams together, or Christmas or summer parties, celebrating the year. Again, all of those things are happy and joyous. How hypocritical would it be if the organization, i.e. us, that was responsible for delivering those things was not happy in itself, it wouldn't make any sense if our team turned up miserable, hacked off, with lots of unresolved anger, with lots of residue of bitterness against someone else or something. How hypocritical would that be? And so we had 3 culture points that I put in place a few years ago, and one of them was have fun. Life is hard grind. Without fun, it's harder. And so that extension to me, have fun, were probably was the single biggest thing that I tried to instill here.
If you go back to Matt of 18, did you build that culture in your brain over time, or was it at 18, I'm going to set this business up and this is how it's going to be in the workplace? Because that it can be shaped over its life experiences and how the business grows and people you bring in and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's so tempting to go back and almost rewrite history to make a nice story now for a good LinkedIn post. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be the authentic person. The truth is, I don't think anything was that intentional when I was 18. But the real truth is, I think, yes, that was absolutely in me when I was 18, because I was very unhappy at school and growing up and at home for lots and lots of complex reasons. And so it really matters to me what I just said, which is, well, now I've finally become an adult at 18, and now that I finally haven't got a teacher or a headmaster telling me what to do, I am finally in charge of my own destiny. This better be flipping good. Otherwise, it's going to repeat of the last 18 years. So that was absolutely in me. It's just that I probably couldn't explain that or articulate that until 5 or 10 years later. Now I can look back and I can see it. I don't think I'm just adding to my story. I think that was always fundamentally in who I am, who I was. It's just that now I can explain it and I can say to you, yeah, do you know what? That's always been in me. It took me a little while to articulate why that mattered to me. And the truth is, it wasn't clear to me at 18 that that was actually abnormal in business for it to be fun and joyous, because I'd never had a job before. I had no work experience. I have never had a boss. It is only growing up and talking to the world and having friends that have proper jobs and being around a lot of other companies and a lot of other cultures that you realize, flipping heck, a lot of this country are drained and exhausted and depressed by their work. In fact, I think it's Gallup that report that 90% of the UK workforce are quietly quitting, i.e. they're not engaged. That's the stat. 90% of the UK workforce aren't engaged. That's ridiculous. And so clearly, I didn't realize it at 18. That wasn't obvious to me. And so I thought that everyone would want to have that kind of culture basis of fundamental happiness around the workplace.
And do you think if you'd got into a business with a miserable boss, you hadn't started Clownfish, you'd done your own thing, would you have then gone, this isn't my culture? Or if you'd gone into a culture place which was really great, would you have founded Clownfish?
That's my favorite question ever. I'm doing lots of these interviews at the moment. That's a great question. I would like to think that I would be empowered to stand up and put myself first and say, actually, and have enough self-love to say, I deserve more than this. I want to, as a personality, I'm the employee here. So as the personality, as me, I want to give you, boss, everything. I want to contribute so much to this company because that's the kind of guy I am. I'm not a half-assed guy. I'm all the way. I'm all in. But there's something about this organization that is draining the life out of me. It is not making me perform my best. I don't even have a good relationship with you, boss. I don't feel like I can even talk to you. And therefore, I have no option but to leave because I respect myself. And I deserve to be in an environment that values me and that can have basic conversation with me about complex things. That's what I teach, like empowerment to the individual. I hope that would be true. It's impossible for me to go back and know, if at 18, had I taken another job, would I have stood up for myself? I would love to think so. But the truth is I didn't at school. So what evidence is there? And I that's probably, I get asked all the time, why did you start a business? Well, I think the main reason was I had to be in charge for once of my own environment and culture because I had felt that the institutions before me, and that was church, school, and maybe family, had on various levels failed me. And to be clear, I'm not bitter at any of those categories now. I've dealt with all of that. But I had felt, rightly or wrongly, at 16, 17, 18, that those institutions before me that I thought I could trust in had let me down in different ways. And so I absolutely fundamentally had to be in charge now of my new own thing. And that's probably why I started a business. Crazy when you think about it. But it was the only way I could guarantee that I was going to be safe, is the truth.
Not necessarily the most obvious way that a lot of people would start their businesses. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do. It wasn't about generating income. I mean, I lived at home. My life didn't cost anything at 18 years old. I didn't need any money. It wasn't about saving the world. I didn't have some game-changing product or service that was going to, change the world forever or innovate anything. I just... I had this nerdy techie hobby, I said at the start, DJing and a bit of PA systems and lighting. And it felt like the one thing I was kind of good at that I could help people with, coupled with this kind of burning desire to be completely in control for once in my own life and rely upon myself solely. And that really is, I think, the truth.
You talk about the Sunday Times Award. For those who aren't in the UK, and there's a lot of people who don't listen from the UK, it's a big newspaper in the UK, or was a big newspaper deprived of newsprint going away, but a big important newspaper, prestigious awards. What drove that award to come to Clownfish Events?
I think I loved. I wanted to be. The truth is, sorry, I hesitated there because this sounds maybe a narcissistic thing. You can judge that yourself. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted the company to be recognized for doing things differently. My belief is that most companies now kind of write something generic like, our staff are our most important asset to us. That's written on most companies' websites. And I always want to ask, could you just give me one way in which you could prove that to me, please? Just one way. Put your money where your mouth is. Like, how are you showing your team that they are your most important asset? And if I interviewed your team, would they say that to me? Probably not. Is my experience anyway. And so look, you can't get culture perfect. We are flawed human beings and working for flawed bosses like myself. So frankly, it can't be done. It's not perfect, but you can get close. And I believe that more often than not, we got really close here, and we did fundamentally very different things to the rest. Just some of those things, when we hit targets, which we did every year for the last 5, I think, we took the whole team on a all expense paid for trip we've done 2 or 3 skiing trips. We did Marrakesh. We went to Norway this year. On top of that, growth was a huge thing to people that worked here and applied. They wanted clear career progression. They wanted to improve, better themselves, grow. And again, a lot of companies say, yep, you can do that in this company, but there's no real clear plan. So we hired 2 coaches called Rory and John, and the team could meet them. We funded therapy for lots of the team. We had so many initiatives, from kind of paid holiday things to birthday days to volunteering. I mean, just so many things. We meet twice a year out of the building for a few nights for our kind of annual conferences and award shows. And there's just so many fun things that I think made us different. Lots of things that were kind of forced to encourage and help and guide culture along. But lots of things that just kind of broke the rut, as I often say, broke the rut of the grind and of the monotony of day-to-day life. And so because I had felt that at great expense, and I really do mean hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds a year on stuff that I suspect, or by definition, that most other companies would not do, I kind of want to be recognized for that. Perhaps not for the arrogance, perhaps more so to inspire others. Because I believed that, and I still believe, that when work is done right, it can actually change people's lives. And I felt that we had so many stories like that in this business of people starting here, either leaving or still being here, and saying words to the effect of being part of this culture and this organization has helped me grow, has helped me mature, has helped me do things I never thought I was possible of doing or capable of doing. It's beautiful. And that does change lives. And it takes 1,000 ways to do that. But I think I wanted to showcase that we were not one of those companies that just generically touted out our staff are our most important asset. I wanted to say, no, we say that, and here's how we back it up. And beautifully, the Sunday Times awarded us last April or May, and we became number one in the hospitality sector for small business. And it was a beautiful moment. I'd never been in the newspaper before, I don't think, as far as I'm aware anyway. And it was a lovely, I knew we had won something, but I did not know we were going to be printed in the paper. And there's a photograph of me somewhere opening the paper on a Sunday morning to looking for just the listing. And to my utter surprise, we had a full page picture of lots of the team standing at a trade show with a big clownfish logo behind. And I remember, and the picture sort of captures it, but I had tears in my eyes. It was a wonderful accolade of something that I think I dedicated a lot of my career to. And that award meant so much more than any industry award about best event supplier, or because that's all secondary to me. That was never the primary goal of this organization. It just so happened that I believe that we are the best at most of the things that we do, but that's not coincidental. When you get culture right, first and foremost, everything else flows, everything else follows. And that's actually what happened.
Culture, you say, you've got 26, 27 people in the business. You took everyone away for the weekend. That's fantastic. That's absolutely commendable. It's brilliant.
Not the weekend. We always did it in work time.
Fine, work time. Sorry, even better to do it in work time. How that works in a smaller company? Like how would you see Matt's employed to be CEO of a 400-person company, 500-person company? You can't probably take them all away. You probably can't all do these things. How do you think culture can translate from that to a bigger company?
That's another great question. And I'm actually doing quite a bit of consultancy at the moment, kind of ad hoc for lots of bigger businesses that used to be clients of ours, that typically do have between kind of 500 and 5,000 employees. And it's a big question. Matt, what you've created is really cool. I'd love to be part of it. But the truth is we have 3,000 people. We have a big client called Octopus Energy, who I'm sure you've heard of, and they are gigantic. I mean, I think they are now a double or triple unicorn company, which means they're at 3 billion, I think. It is extraordinary, their growth. It's kind of unprecedented, especially in the energy sector. And they are well known now and winning awards for just how they handle and how they treat their team. And that's a great example of a sort of 10,000 person plus company doing it right. And so what I would start by saying is it looks different to a 30-person company, of course. And there are things you can take and there are things you probably can't take. But also there are things you can do in a 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 person companies that you couldn't do in a 30. And one of them might be having a much greater pool of diversity and all the strengths that brings. And so I think I'd say it is still entirely possible to have great culture in large organizations. It is just a different conversation. It is a more of a complex challenge. The big thing I'd want to say is that to your leadership team across all the organizations wants to be really tight, because really they have so much power to affect their sub-teams. And so often in larger organizations, actually the leadership teams are so far away from the kind of C-suite. They're so distant from central message. They're so distant from what the CEO even thinks. They don't even know who the CEO is. That by the time it gets down to the kind of worker and the sub-team, it's just so diluted. They're just so far away. And maybe I'm biased here because it's what I did for a living for a long time, but there is so much beauty to be had in bringing big companies together. That really is how we built a business, by bringing together 3,000 employees for a 1 or 2 day event. That is a start to try and fix what I just spoke about, which is the dissonance or the distance or the dilution, all the D words, between top leadership layer and, frankly, everyone else. Because people fundamentally want to be part of something bigger. People are tribal. Humans are a tribal by nature. We always have been. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to be going somewhere. I have a belief that most people actually want to do a great job. Most people, when they interview on day one, say words to the effect of, I am a bend over backwards type personality. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm a problem solver. I will work hard. The targets you give me, I'm going to smash. Most people say words to that effect. But if you were to record their interview and play it back to them in 3 years' time, 1 year's time, and say, who is that person? Is that person that you just spoke, that you described? Where did that person go? Is that person still present? Or has that person somehow lost themselves along the way? And my instinct, and again, I'm speaking broadly here, but my instinct is that most people, if they were to be replayed their interview tape from a year or 3 ago, might not even recognize themselves, because that's not the person they've become in the reality of the actual job. And you can blame 1,000 things for that. The cost of living has gone up, so I'm more stressed. So when I get to work, I'm more aggy. My boss is a complete insert word, and I've given up. I don't even care anymore. There's no point even attending work. I just work from home most of the time, and they don't even know what I'm doing. Or things are so unclear now from the government, from our biggest client. You can do excuses all day long, but for whatever reason, that shifted. And I think in bigger companies, that happens even faster, that difference from interview day to reality a year later. And so one great way in big companies is to just continually invest, and it is an investment, but one that I believe pays dividends, into getting people back round, connected to what on earth this organization is trying to achieve, and how your part in this 10,000 person company can play a significant role. And I believe that's possible. And I believe someone like Octopus Energy are trying to do exactly that and are succeeding. And as a result, they are dominating the energy market right now. It is not a coincidence. There's that great Jim Rohn quote, success leaves clues. I never love it when people look at great companies and think, oh, how lucky were they? They were in the right place at the right time. Or, oh, weren't they lucky to get a great team? Or, oh, weren't they? It was ridiculous. It's not luck. It's all of it is intentional, strategic, hard work that possibly has taken decades to achieve. That would be the same with our business, same with Octopus. And so I believe it can happen. It's a different conversation, but it's a different conversation. It's a conversation that should be the top, I believe, of the C-suite's to-do list, because it changes everything. I mean, at the moment, we're not completely controlled by AI. And so at the moment, humans are responsible for running and delivering the organization's goals. And so as long as humans are, we have got to be better at lifting them up, giving them a mission, connecting them to that mission, and leading them brilliantly.
When you come to hiring somebody in Clownfish and businesses going forward, did you do a sort of a test on them to see if they were going to fit in the culture? Did they have to go and play football in the park or whatever? Or do you do, because I've seen you on Clownfish, you playing football in the courtyard outside the businesses at lunchtime or whatever. Did you have to get them to do that to see if they're going to fit? And if you had people who perhaps didn't fit, how did you try and mold them into the culture of Clownfish?
Fun. I never got anyone to play football for an interview. And I would have no issue, to be clear, if they didn't want to do that. It just so happens when you hire people who want to be here, who believe in your mission, who show up, not just for themselves, but also for their colleagues, then you find people naturally at lunchtime want to come outside and speak to their colleagues. It's a natural, it's not a coincidence. It's a natural occurrence that team here would want to go outside, chat to their colleagues, take a break during the day, have a bit of fun, make a fool of themselves, and not be embarrassed. This is a sign of significantly effective culture. How do I that became, sorry, how do I, I'll finish the sentence. How do I know that someone's going to fit in here? It's a really complicated job, and that became a massive part of my full-time job. When I was here, recruitment became, I would suggest, a day or two a week. I felt it was, especially towards the end as we were growing fast. There are 100 ways. I became much better as time went on in the interview process to learn what to look for and perhaps what not to look for. The best thing I ever did in interviews was make someone feel comfortable, because by doing that, I was much more likely to get themselves at their natural state and reveal more of themselves to me. I generally don't believe what people write on CVs. I generally take everything with an inch of salt, or pinch of salt, sorry. And so the conversation part, whether it's on Zoom or in real life, became the most important part. And actually, I would monitor everything. I would walk them around the building after 45 minutes if I felt the interview had gone well. And I would just look for little simple things on if they're really looking around, asking questions, if they are engaging with the team that inevitably come over and say hello. I just noticed the detail stuff, the kind of shorthand kind of realities of how people behave, especially when they think they're not being watched. Do they thank the office manager for making them a coffee? Do they open the door open? Do they hold the door open? Or, whatever. There are 100 ways, but I just think that eventually you become pretty good at working out, has someone got the right mindset? And really, that's what it's all about. I say this all the time again, but you can't really believe skill set anyway on a piece of paper. How do you actually know someone functionally can do the role until they actually begin? But I think what you can gauge is, does someone have the right energy, the right mindset to fit in around here? Do they actually want to be challenged? Are they okay with healthy conflict? Do they want to grow? And if the answer to those three things are yes, I'm fairly comfortable to take a risk, because I believe that I can embed them into an existing culture that works for them as proven, and suddenly the risk dissipates.
And that culture internally, it sounds brilliant, and I'd love to work for Clownfish. But there must have been times when you went, oh, this isn't working culturally, or there's a trade-off, that this has been brilliant and that, there's a negative thing here. How did you get awareness or self-awareness? We talked about self-awareness. How did you get that self-awareness to that? And how did you then deal with that and adjust it?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, culture is just the most constantly evolving thing ever. It changes all the time. And the truth is, if people could see inside my brain, I think they'd be very surprised. People often say to me, oh, Matt, it all looks great for you. It's all kind of roses and happiness and laughter and ski trips. And I guess that's what social media perhaps shows them. But that's not reality. It's not real life. There were so many tragedies that happened in the team's lives whilst working here. Death is a reality. People with difficulties at home, parents, kids, falling outs, breakups, health. There is a reality that people cannot jump for joy every single day in any organization. There is a reality that real life is happening all the time. And I think in the early days, I would perhaps try to hide that and try and pretend it wasn't happening and just encourage people to turn up as their best self. Like, I still would encourage that, turn up as your best self. When you come into this building, you're a professional now. But I think so many times in my brain, I thought to myself, oh gosh, that's not quite right. That's not working. I forced that. I shouldn't have forced that. That was awkward, or I made that person feel uncomfortable. That wasn't right. And that's part of the overthinking thing that actually probably served me very well in the end, albeit exhausted me. Things change all the time. We mature as a business. When this business began, it was me and a best friend. I said that right at the start. So culture didn't really matter. It was just it was just me and Alistair having time of our lives. Kind of didn't really matter how many days we worked or how many hours. And that, the truth is, that probably continued for 3 or 4 years with a few other friends that joined in the early days. fast forward 16 years, you have married people with children of different ages. You realize that can't go on. You can't work 6-7 day weeks with undefined hours. That's not going to be sustainable and isn't great for people's life. So there was just so much adapting and evolving. And I think what I'm proud of is that I just kept changing things. Something didn't work. Okay, that wasn't quite fair for that kind of person. Or do you know what? 5 years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we were not a great company to work for if you had kids, because I didn't really understand it, is the honest truth. And we didn't have any mums or dads at that stage. We were a small company. We were like, I was 25 years old. There were probably 7 or 8 of us. And the average age probably was 23. So no parents for our company then. And so, it's interestingly, someone asked me not long before I left, if I joined this company, would I be expected to come to the ski trip if we hit target? Because I have kids and that'd be a difficult thing to be away for. What a great question. And you start to realize, okay, yeah, some of the things that we have done that really worked for a 20, 25, 30 person organization with a low average age actually won't work in the future. And that's to your point. Now, either I can scrap the ski trip and replace it with something else, or I can make it more flexible, or I can allow, and this is what happened apparently in January. I think one of the mums just flew in for 24 hours and we funded the flights just to do that. They dropped in for the Tuesday only because they wanted to be home for the Wednesday. And that was accepted and normalized. That's a new thing for clownfish culture. I would have found that harder 7 or 8 years ago because I would have thought, no, you've got to be there for the whole thing because that's the whole buy-in. That's the whole point we're doing this. I want everyone in the same room for 5 days together on a ski slope in Chamonix. And I think with time and growth and maturity, you realize, oh, hold on a second, people need to do life as well. And that's the biggest thing that I think I've got so much better at in the last few years before I left. People have to be able to do life too. Otherwise, this doesn't work for anyone because people become resentful and their partners or whoever they live with become resentful of the organization and people don't do their best work and people will eventually leave. And that is lose, lose, and lose. And so the big thing, if I've answered your question in a very roundabout way, but the big thing I think is we matured as a company as we matured in age and life stages. And that was a really good thing.
It's like the company growing up through the teenage years, and now it's becoming, the company's becoming an adult as well as all the staff are becoming adults in that way. But I think it will improve the culture of the business if you allow the people to do those things that they want to be able to do, because the culture will improve, as you said, they'll improve, they'll be happier, they'll be more engaged.
Exactly right.
You've hired a lot of people, but people, I'm sure, have left Clownfish over the period of time you were there. What do you hope they took with them from Clownfish to their next employer?
One of the, maybe it's a bit show off, but one of the things I was proud of is that no one ever left in all of my time here. I think it's true as of today. No one ever left to join another rival or competitive events company. So people obviously left for life reasons, for different career reasons, for becoming parents. But no one ever left to join another events company or hotel or anything like that. And that made me quite proud. Because I tried to make culture here so good that if anyone left to work for another events company, I would have to ask, well, why? What have they got right that we haven't? We're fundamentally doing a similar thing. I'd be very surprised. And so that kept me making things here as good as they possibly could be, i.e. the best in the industry. But that wasn't your question, sorry. Your question was, what do you think they took? I say this a lot, and I love this notion of whether you loved it here or whether you hated it here. The only thing that really matters to me is that people say at the end of their term at Clownfish, they can say, I grew. And I believe that everyone that has left or has been exited out, whatever they think of me or the organization, can simply say, because of my time working in that business, I grew as a person. I was given opportunities that I couldn't have got elsewhere because I was trusted. I made friendships that I never believed I could make at work. I was empowered. I was given a voice. I did things I never thought I could do. I got put in situations. I got given clients. I made, that's what I want people to say. I grew in confidence. I grew to find the things inside of me that I was really good at and my line manager was so effective, they extracted those things and made them my job. That would be the most exciting answer, and I hope people do say that. And wonderfully, from time to time, I get messages, often 5-10 years later, and sometimes from a lot of students. We used to hire a lot of part-time gap year students. 10 years later, I might get a LinkedIn or a message or a text just saying, by the way, that was the most pivotal year of my life. That's where I grew in confidence. Because Matt, when you shoved me in front of a photo booth at Google's head office when I was 20 years old, full of intoxicated guests, I am forced to show up and to give it my best shot. And actually, hospitality is a great, because that's very similar to staffing a photo booth, is a wonderful skill to learn, to be able to deal with the public, to be able to deal with late nights, people drinking, people a bit excited. It's to control people in that environment. It's a great skill for life. And so I think most importantly to me, whatever they think of me or this business, they can say, Matt, from my time with Clownfish, as a person, I grew. And if that's true, that's amazing. That's a result.
I say something, not paraphrasing or taking your thing. I just say to people that if they come and join my team, I want them to leave a better person.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're here a week, 2 weeks, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I want them to leave them better than they arrived in the company I work for. If you were starting again today, what would Matt be doing differently? Or would Matt have do you know what? Actually, I got 99% of this right.
I would definitely share the journey more. That sounds like I mean on YouTube, because that's the modern thing to do. That probably is true. That's not what I meant, though. I would share it more. I'd share the burden more. I think a mistake that I made was I didn't seek outside counsel or help quick enough. I had this slightly weird ego thing that meant I wanted to do it all myself. And if I was going to make it, it's because I did it. That was my 18 to 24-year-old inner child, frankly. That's ridiculous. That's just arrogant. It's just stupid. It's just short-term way of thinking. The second during the pandemic, that ended up being an amazing thing for me and for us and as a company, because it was the time I realized, okay, it's time to start professionalizing. We've run an amateur business so far. Now it's time to really grow and become professional instead of like a wannabe business person. And so that was when I started almost disproportionately spending compared to what I had spent on outside consultancy, help, new finance directors, business development directors, performance coaches, therapists. I mean, the list goes on, actually. I mean, it was extraordinary. I was flying around the world, going to business conferences and courses. I started to read, listen to podcasts, and I just became a significantly better and more experienced business person. And even though so much of the teachings and learnings I did in those years were just reaffirming what I already thought, it kind of gave me the push and the confidence to say, cool, I've got this. And that helped me invariably. So if I was to all over again, I'd just get some more help. I'd hire a mentor from day one. And I might even, and don't quote me on this, but I might even share it with a business partner, 50-50. Make it a two-way joint venture from day one, perhaps.
And is that just because you feel the ownership structure could be different to how it works in the team? But would you just feel that if they've got 50% pie and you've got 50%, you are sharing that from a mental health point of view almost?
Yeah, I think that is what I'm saying there. If the two owners, let's say it was 50-50, if we were really, really well defined on exactly what our responsibilities and our roles were, and we felt that they kind of proportionately shared, roughly speaking, 50-50 of the pressure, I think I'd feel much more comfortable with that. I felt for the majority of my career here that the majority of the pressure was really solely on me. And I really felt that. Now, maybe that's because I was young for a lot of my career, trying to hold a business together without much experience or exposure to the real world. But maybe it's because I felt a little bit lonely at the top, which I think is the phrase I hear from lots of my founder and director friends, or even senior leader friends. So there's something about, look, I'm currently helping a few people that are having difficulties with their shared ownership structure. You know, they say that a sinking ship is a partnership is a sinking ship. You know, so yeah, choose your hard. But I'm thinking out loud, and part of me wonders, had I had someone from day one who was a slightly more experienced and a different leader to me, where I could have got quicker, maybe.
Hindsight. Can't look back and reject, though.
I agree.
One final question. We obviously, this is called the Business Takeaway Podcast. If somebody sat down, Matt, what's your golden rule? What's your one lesson I can learn from you? What would you turn around and say to
them? That probably changes every single day. I change my mind all the time on this. I really like the quote from Martin Luther King at the moment. The ultimate measure of a leader, I mean, he says man, but I'm changing it a bit. The ultimate measure of a leader is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. And I think what I take from that is anyone can run a business. I mean, anyone, if all the conditions are perfect. Anyone can do great work in a team. If your client says yes on the first quote they send, if the event loading bay is perfect, if everything runs to time, that's not difficult. The job is not that difficult if all the conditions in the environment are literally perfect. But as everyone in the world can adhere to, that isn't reflective of real life. And so I said this a lot to team here, and I say it a lot to leaders as well. The ultimate measure of you or a person is not actually where you stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but in fact, where you stand at times of challenge and controversy. So the people that have done the best in this organization, and generally in most companies, are the people that have stuck around and weathered the storm when the shit hits the fan. When, if I can say that word, when things get really difficult. That's the ultimate measure of someone in times of challenge and controversy. And I think too often people kind of quit and walk away in those moments. And instead I want to say, no, those are the moments in which you can grow. They're the moments in which you can learn the best. They are the moments that you'll look back and be so grateful that you stuck around, because the learning you took from that difficult moment was great for you. Whether you're an employer or an employee, I think that works for both.
Matt, thank you very much. There's been some absolutely great answers. So I think there's a tradition we end up on with some rapid fire questions. As I said to you before we started recording, these aren't sometimes rapid fire, they turn into a discussion point, but let's see where we go. Are you an Apple or Android user?
iPhone.
What's your social media platform of choice?
None of them.
If you had to, what would it be?
LinkedIn feels the most healthy, I suppose, and I find myself not really kind of looking or comparing so much. So LinkedIn.
Are you a beach or city break type person?
City.
Would you rather live in the town or country? And given you talk about towns and Wimbledon, probably going to say town. But
well, I have lived in a town my whole life, and I've just moved to Cobham in Surrey, which is a beautiful pocket of the world, which does feel like country. So I'm going to say country.
Do you travel first class or save the money?
I might go red answering this, but I don't love flying. So for short haul, I would save the money. But for America, where I go a lot, I would generally fly business because I'm not a very good flyer, and it helps me. Here's my excuse.
That's your excuse, and you're sticking by it, right? Are you a morning or night person?
I was always been a night person my whole career, and just very strangely, since I left, I've been getting up at 6 pretty much every morning, including weekends, naturally. And I love it. And I take our new dog for a walk in the morning sun, especially in the summer. So I've shifted randomly and unexpectedly to mornings.
It's probably the distress, that thing of not having the pressure of running your business, right? Probably that happened. Exercise, do you enjoy it? Do you not do it? Is it important?
Brand new thing for me, but yeah, I either go to the gym or I run pretty much every single day, 6 days a week. Never ever have been that person in my life, but this is the kind of fittest and most healthy I've ever been. And so now it's become a bit of an addiction. I've become that voice. I've become that person that really recommends it, more for my mental health than for physique or anything like that. But I do feel great most of the time now, having done exercise.
Are you somebody to innovate or improve?
I want to say innovates. Oh well, I want to say both, but no, I think I I think I really like to innovate. I love that kind of first principle thinking idea that people like Elon Musk talk about a lot, i.e. take something back to its fundamental truths and work up from there, as opposed to seeing how everyone else has done it and kind of copy that and improve that. I'd rather strip things right back to how it should be done, or how I would do it, so I want to say innovator.
Would you challenge the status quo or not to challenge?
Challenge the status quo, 100%.
And if I'm standing at a bar, what is your drink of choice?
Coke Zero with no ice, 1 straw and 1 lemon wedge.
That's very particular on the 1 straw. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. It's your talks on culture and how you believe in people and everything is fascinating. It's been really, really amazing to listen to. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for hosting this, and thank you for doing this. It's a great thing to share people's messages and hopefully to inspire. So thank you for your work, and thank you for having me.
No problems at all. A massive thank you to Matt joining us today on the Business Takeaway podcast. There were so many lessons about culture, people, and how to develop a business. I'm sure many of you found insightful. If you haven't listened to any of our episodes before, please do make sure you're subscribed and you follow us so you can get notifications about our future episodes. And if you haven't listened to any, please also do go back and listen to some of our back catalogue. There's some great episodes with some great advice out there that I'm sure you will take benefit. If you are subscribed to us, please do leave us a rating. The more ratings and the more reviews that you leave us, we have the opportunity to grow our guest pool and also grow the amount of episodes we do. Just leaves me to say thank you very much for listening today. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and we'll catch up with you on the next episode.